Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us at Awake, Aware, Arise. I'm really excited to see you here and for today's session, as we will be talking about owning our constraints so that they don't own us. And really excited about the conversation that we'll have with these amazing panelists here. Would love for anyone, this is going to be an interactive session, so please, please, please say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Ask any questions, any burning questions that you may have, and we'll get to them. And yeah, let's get started. Dreyvan, do you want to say a couple words?
Yeah, this is, I just want to start with saying that this is a very, a topic very dear to my heart. It's because it really kind of rules us. It rules us on a day-to-day basis. It rules everything about us, the way we think, the way we behave, the way we interact with people, the way we act in this world, etc., etc. So I feel this is a wonderful topic to explore and also see it from the context of how it would be important for a coach. So that's why it's looking forward to this discussion.
Sorry, I was on mute. I know one of the first things that we were planning to talk about is just having a conversation about worldviews. So Magda, you already talked about your worldview. But really, what are worldviews? What do they hold for us? What do they mean? Does anyone want to sort of jump in and chat about that, whether you sort of post something in the chat from the audience, or we can share?
I can always jump in. So if you don't want me to jump in, tell me not to, but you know me, I'll always jump in.
Yes.
So to me, worldview is, how I see the world. How does my context, my past, my experience, what kind of color or tint it gives to how I perceive the world around me. And my worldview is very different from everybody else's worldview, most likely. So that's how I see it. It's my own interpretation of the world.
That's wonderful. Actually, that's a perfect kind of a definition and its introduction to worldviews, because yes, a couple of things that you probably would have thought of, but you didn't probably add to that is like even the assumptions, even the taken for granted assumptions, and all of that, even our social embeddedness, the cultural embeddedness that we grow up with, all of that is part of the worldview. And it's fantastic the way you described it. And if I just expand on what you said, if you have a unique worldview, then there are 7.8 billion unique worldviews on this planet. And we're trying to survive despite the fact that all of them are different. And that's what makes this interesting.
Yeah. And it's also interesting that conceptually we can talk about worldviews, and yet, I don't know, I find myself in a day-to-day normal interactive basis having to constantly remind myself that somebody has a different worldview and different perceptions than I do. I feel like it's kind of amazing because as human beings, we are branded with individual worldviews, but we don't always have the consciousness to be aware that other people don't see things the same way that we do. Which is really interesting. Does anyone have any sort of input on that?
Well, it changes.
Again,
so
I'll
much.
always have. Oh no, sorry, Leah.
No, don't
I'll
worry.
be quiet. Go.
Oh, I've forgotten. No, yes, it changes because I remember when I was a child, when I was younger, there was no internet, and I think the internet's changed our worldviews in many different ways. But when I was a child, I knew nothing more than my community. I didn't even know the peninsula that I lived on. My mum didn't drive. So therefore, my world is literally my little house and my school and my pretty bizarre estate. And I remember the first time that I met someone from a different culture. Wow. I mean, that's how limited my worldview was. And now it's so different. you know, it's completely changed. I live in a different part of the world. I've traveled the world. So I think for me, the worldview is not only different for everyone, it changes all of the time, if not daily, depending on the news or what influences our minds at that point in time.
Yeah, that's you know, as you're saying that, the question that comes up for me is that a conscious process or is that an unconscious process? And the fact that it is changing on a day-to-day basis, depending on what you're getting, whom you're getting exposed to, the communities you're getting exposed to, the countries you're traveling to, the news that you're getting exposed to on television and etc. So is worldview something that consciously changes or unconsciously changes? You know, that's something that, I mean, I was trying to explore. So I'm just throwing that question in there.
For me, gosh, you start off with a hard question there. This is a deep one, right? Okay, so for me, let's say I'm on Instagram and I'm looking at photographs of anthropology. It's a hobby of mine. I really love anthropology and culture. And so that's conscious. I'm actually wanting to explore different cultures. I'm consciously choosing to watch the news, however, not consciously taking everything that I hear. Subconsciously, I mean, don't we all have a wisdom within us, something within us anyway, that's being triggered by all the things that happen in the world that we see? Maybe so. Yes, I guess it is. Tell us more.
Well, to me, I think it's unconscious a lot of times, but what's great is that we have the ability to make it conscious. So I'll give you an example that I experienced last week, actually. So I was in one of these sessions with Kelly Wendorf, and we're talking about subtle acts of exclusion. And later that day, I listened to a podcast about how the Indian caste system is rearing its ugly head in Silicon Valley. And I'm like, wait, what? And only then I started thinking about the questions that I ask all the time when I meet somebody from a different culture. And I work with a lot of people from India, right? So the first things I ask is, where are you from? And just I ask about kind of their life. And I didn't realize that the kind of questions that I was asking potentially could be actually revealing in their culture what caste they are from, which to me is a completely non-issue. Like, it's not something that I'm ever aware of, but somebody else could be. And by me having that worldview, culture is fantastic, is great. I want to learn more. Diversity is amazing. I mean, I know what caste is, but like, it's socioeconomic status of any kind has never been a thing that I'm ever, biased towards. So, but for the other person, it could be a very real reality of life, depending on how they grew up and who they work with right now and what matters to them. So I realized that even asking, subtle questions like, where are you from? Because I'm interested, could reveal something they don't want to reveal. So anyway, to me, that's kind of like been an eye opener. So we can discuss this another time with Indian colleagues. So I would love to get their feedback of how I should behave, but it really opened my eyes as to a completely different world view that they have. And I'm going to be more careful. I'm consciously changing that now, and I'm going to continue to change it so that I don't put people on a spot.
That's brilliant. Tracy, you had shared something sometime back when we had a discussion about your shifting worldviews about, particularly racism and all of that, and how it had kind of, really impacted you. Why don't you share some of that?
Yeah. Well, one thing that actually still continues to shock me is because I think, I've evolved around as a person, and I really work on being open and all of these things. And even the other day, it was in Meenakshi's webinar, and she asked that question about, when you think of Dr. Jones or something, who do you see? And literally, I'm ashamed to say, the first thing that popped up on my mind was like a white male, probably like 40, early 50s. Like that's the thing that came up. So it's like, I'm still structured by the worldview that I was raised with, essentially, even though I don't want to be. And, you know, it came up a lot for me in regards to racism, and particularly earlier in the year, because I grew up in a city where it was multicultural, and because my parents, their religion was very, at least on the surface, talking about accepting everyone and all of those things, I just always thought to myself, I'm not racist. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not with racist people or things like that. And I think my eyes just got really, really, really open within, especially this last year. Actually, I would even say even before that, traveling to Nicaragua and spending time there, I realized I had no idea of what white privilege is until going somewhere else. And the fact that I'm living in this sort of privileged state and assuming that I'm not privileged is something to do with my worldview right there. So yeah, that sort of started opening things up for me, and the realization of things like, you know, I grew up thinking police are there to help us. There's people that grew up thinking that police are there to be afraid of, you know, and which one is the truth? So it starts raising a lot of questions about our assumptions and also about our truths.
Yeah, actually, wonderful, because it is the truth from which we live out of. You know, it is how the world is really for us, and nothing else other than that exists for us. And so we are operating from a context, that meaning that the worldview becomes the context from which we are operating and interacting with the world with. And that's a very, very powerful thing to, you know, understand, because it's like the worldview, from my understanding, is almost like what, you know, what water is to the fish, and what air is to the bird. When the fish is swimming in the water, it's born in the water, it never steps out of the water, so it never knows anything about what water is. It can perceive everything else in that surrounding, in that environment, but the water, it's taken for granted. And so it is something which is almost like invisible, non-existent for the fish. And similarly for the bird, the air is non-existent. The worldview is more or less something like that. It's non-existent for us, but it's ruling us. It's the truth from where we are operating. It holds everything like a container for, I mean, we are living inside of that container, and we don't know that we are operating from there. You know, that is how powerful it is. And unless we realize that is the state in how we are actually showing up, that is how we are showing up in this world. I mean, unless we identify that, and how, like Magda brought up, that, you know, I am constantly working on it. I'm aware of the worldviews that I have. It's a constant kind of work that needs to be, you know, put in regularly, and particularly as coaches, so that we expand our worldviews and encompass other possibilities inside of that, because our truth is not the only truth in the world. Truth is very, very relative, very, very relative in most cases, unless like everybody agrees, yes, that's the sky, and then yes, that's the sky, that is the truth, yes. But then there's so many other things that we talk about and we hold, which are just relative to, like how, again, Magda brought up the caste system, the language, the religion, the socioeconomic, stratas in the society. Everything kind of plays a role into defining that worldview. So yes, it's very, very important what you're saying, Tracy.
You know, this reminds me of a quote, and I'm probably going to pronounce his name wrong. Friedrich Nietzsche. There are no facts, only interpretations. I think it is. Yeah, there are no facts, only interpretations.
Beautiful.
Is there really a truth? And I think, was it Shakespeare? There's nothing either good or bad. Oh God. But thinking makes it so. So are there facts? Is there a truth? Or is it just purely our interpretation of what's out there? And that's the same with the world. Is there really, I don't know, everything's opinion, isn't it? It's all based on our opinion, not fact. Even science sometimes a scientist interprets the results, yet there might be a hidden factor that hasn't been discovered yet. And they may be deemed true, but is it fully? I don't know. Yeah, sorry, that came into my mind when you were talking.
And so interesting, because when you talked about science, even science starts off with bias. Science starts off with a belief, and then you basically they basically go to confirm that belief. And sometimes by doing that, they'll discover other facts. That's how some of I'm not a scientist, but I know that's how a lot of the discoveries were made, because they were looking to confirm one assumption and then something else came forward. So I wonder, can we ever operate without a bias? Is that even possible?
Yeah, it is. Then the question is, are worldviews, good or bad? Are they required or not required? I mean, and is it good or bad? And can you do something about the fact that we do have worldviews, and then how to do away with it?
I made the face when Tracy just said bias, because I don't like that word, because it has a negative connotation. Maybe that's my bias, I don't know. But having a context isn't bad or good. It just is. It's just who I am. Like you said, there's 7.8 billion people, and they all have different kinds of biases. I think what you do with it once you learn the consequences of that bias is what's important. I'll give you another example. I grew up in communist Poland, in a small village, and the world was what it was. If you wanted a salad, you went to the garden and you picked your vegetables. If you wanted to make chicken soup, you killed a chicken. If you wanted a sausage, you raised and killed a pig. These were things, and I knew that we took care of all. I had to name the pigs when I was growing up. So for me, they were around, and then I knew that they were eventually become food. And I didn't like the fact the pig was gone, but I understood it, right? And then when I moved to America, and I moved to a city, and then subsequently, as early as my late 20s, I was a big meat eater. Give me a steak, I'll devour that thing. It was like a badge of honor. But what I didn't really, even in my late 20s, didn't understand is how different food production is from what I grew up with. It didn't occur to me that cruelty is a thing. It didn't occur to me that, chickens get put on conveyor belts, and their wings and their heads get chopped off. These things that are just they make me throw up now. I didn't know they existed, because I thought that the circle of life was just respected. I thought, I don't know what I thought. The point is, the more I learned, especially in the past few years, I've been vegetarian, for the reason of I get the circle of life, but that's not how we produce our food. It's not how even vegetable production, there's so many chemicals, we're destroying so much to produce a freaking radish. So, I grow what I can. And yeah, it's really, really, my worldview has changed so dramatically, and it's still the same thing. It's still food. It's still the same. I'm still making the same kind of salad I would have made, when I was a kid with my grandma, then when I was an adult living in Australia, and now that I'm an adult living in Chicago. But my worldview of how that salad is made and where it comes from, what comes into it, is so completely different. And I think that's what matters. Is when you realize, become aware of the worldview, and you have enough data to, I think, evaluate whether this is something I should continue or something I should change. And then you take a deliberate action to change it, because you've made that hopefully good judgment call that it's something that needs to be changed.
Wow.
Yeah, Leah, please.
I think it was Tracy, but I did have something on my mind, so I'll just share it. Magda, when you were saying that, it made me think of a time in the UK when we had happy hen eggs, and they were on the shelves of shops, and people would buy them thinking that they were happy chickens, happy hens. And actually, it's our worldview being manipulated. It's our perception they weren't. They were on the conveyor belts, etc. And yeah, just how worldviews can also be manipulated by other people. So you follow their worldview for their potential greed or other reasons. So sorry, Tracy, I did butt in then.
No, I'm happy you did. And it's interesting what came up for me as you were speaking, and how your perspective can change so much based on what you've grown up with, and when you go to a different place. I obviously grew up in Canada. As most of my life I spent in Toronto, and I am embarrassed to say I was one of those people that I would always, buy a bottle of water, and I was like, well, I don't drink pop, I don't drink, and so like if I'm out and I need water, I'll just buy a bottle of water. It's okay because I recycle. And when I went to travel and I went to Nicaragua, and there, because in Toronto, you put out your recycling in little bins, and you put out your, it's all quite clean. And when I went there, and you would drive by these dump areas, and you would see the amount of garbage and the amount of plastic, and even on the beaches and all of those things, especially on the beaches when people are coming for the weekend and spending time there. And I realized just how much garbage that we generate. And my daughter had been after me about plastic water bottles, and I made a comment about, being bothered by the dump. And she said, well, you can actually see the amount of waste here. We don't see it when we live in a, North American city where, and especially in an area where garbage, because let's not assume it's not like that everywhere in North America, but when you live in an area where they pick up garbage and all of these things. And so I just suddenly was way more conscious of my own waste, because I realized that waste doesn't, just because it gets put away in places where we don't see it, doesn't mean that it disappears. And so, yeah, anyway, that came up for me as you shared that. I think the danger is when we never get outside of our worldviews, right? Like when we sort of, they're always going to exist for us. But what happens when we never have an opportunity to get outside of them?
I often thought that people who are in very powerful positions, people who are in the government, people who are, very well educated, like, scientists and professors who are teaching in B schools and et cetera, probably have a very largish kind of a perspective about what's happening in the world and all of that. But as you're saying this, as you shared that, Tracy, about, the garbage and how the whole of, you and I have been catching up a lot on a lot of these documentaries. I mean, we kind of, the Social Dilemma, which is recently running on Netflix, even this David Attenborough's One Planet, One Life on One Planet, all these documentaries. And they kind of just showing how humanity, and how humans actually have tilted the entire, equation on this planet, and how they've kind of suddenly started dominating everything else, every other species on this planet. And a lot of it is coming from, are sourced by these powerful people, who are doing all this to somehow personally benefit out of the whole process. And in the way millions and millions of species on this planet are getting wiped out. The corals across the world have got wiped out. I mean, if the global warming is becoming even more serious problem on a day-to-day basis. All these, and I would often think that, how do we tackle these kind of things, and what kind of worldviews are these people operating from? Sometimes it becomes a collective worldview, in the sense like, I mean, you could compare an Obama's government with Donald Trump's government and their specific policies across environmental issues, and you could see that there are two contrasting kind of ways of handling environment. One did not promote use of fossil fuel, another one is promoting the use of fossil fuel, and all of that. And how do we I mean, knowing that all this is coming from worldviews, then how do we access and how do we use this concept of worldview to be able to resolve these issues? These are questions that come to my mind.
Dreyvan, the first thing that comes into my mind is togetherness, oneness, coming together, a shared ability of taking responsibility of our perceptions, our opinions, trying to understand each other. I think for me, where the problem lies is when one specific individual has the final say based on their perception, based on their upbringing, based on their education, based on all those things that are beliefs, and beliefs can be biases and so on and so forth. So I think for me, the answer is there should not be just one person as one leader, but maybe a leader that brings other leaders and the general population together to find joint solutions and exploring all different perceptions of everybody. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind, oneness.
It's really interesting on that topic of oneness, or even right now we're seeing so much fractionality, right? And that was one thing that really came to mind with me with the social dilemma, was how they talked about there how social media basically shows us posts by people that have similar worldviews, essentially similar point of view. So it kind of almost creates these echo chambers within. So you're mostly seeing commentary from people that agree with you. And what's really, really interesting is even when that is bridged, even when somehow or another you are able to see posts from someone that has a different point of view, I couldn't believe at the beginning of the pandemic how many people were posting saying, if you say this or if you say that, even just about the virus and whether or not the virus was real and all of these things, threatening to delete each other off of Facebook. And I'm not even getting into the right or wrong of deleting someone, but you know, my eyes were really kind of opened by an article that I read a little while ago, before all of this started, that talked about how what open-mindedness means, right? And we think open-mindedness means accepting, you know, other people and accepting, you know, in the sense of being liberal. But open-mindedness also means sitting down and having dinner maybe with someone who's racist. Because if we're never doing that, what's happening? People that are racist are only around other people that are racist, only around other people that are confirming their worldviews. We're only around other people that are confirming our worldviews. And I see like this sort of danger, especially with those of us who ask a lot of these questions of ourselves, like coaches and leaders and people that really care. You sort of surround yourself by other people that really care. And what happens when we're creating these own echo chambers within our own lives? But also how do I access my unconditional positive regard for someone who stands for everything that goes against my like deepest value system? I love to hear some feedback on that, because I struggle with that.
It's making me very, very bubbly inside as you're talking, because I'm #1 fan of unconditional positive regard. I mean, when I learned this concept, it changed my life. When I think of the kind of person you're describing, i.e. a racist, i.e. somebody who is cruel to animals, Donald Trump, I'm sorry, maybe does that make me a bad person? That I don't think I have that within me. Sorry, I know I don't have that within me to be able to extend that to certain people. And perhaps that makes me not a great coach. But, you know, at what point is listening to people's different worldviews, at what point is it educational and broadening horizons and bringing awareness, blah, blah? And at what point does it become giving a pulpit to someone who really doesn't deserve one? Because I got triggered by Donald Trump now. You know, I was just reading yesterday, he was trying to attack a veteran CNN reporter, and one of his little recordings came back and said, yes, I'm going to call you idiots and talk badly about you, so that the public, so that it can discredit you. So when you write something bad about me, no one's going to believe you. Like, does that kind of person deserve any sort of voice or listening from me? No.
Can I jump in, Magda? As like an opposite side. Okay, I totally agree with what you're saying there, in the sense that it's not nice. It's horrible to be around some of those people, and I wouldn't particularly want to be, and I wouldn't choose to. However, I've had the unfortunate and fortunate experience of working with young people and adults who are deemed bad people, gang members, for example, I've worked in child protection. I've worked with really, really naughty kids who hurt animals, who do bad things. And even dogs, vicious dogs that would bite me. And I need to try and understand or see a different side. One, because it's a professional side of what I'm doing, but two, because I'm eager to find out what the past has to do, the present and the future potential of every living thing. And what I try and keep in mind, someone said to me when I was younger, do you know, Lee, I think your job in the future is to shine a light on those who shun the light of day. And that was all they said. And I spent absolutely ages contemplating this quote. What does that mean? And I saw a quote after that. Sorry, I'm full of quotes today, but there's a quote and I've had to search it because I didn't remember it all, which is, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that, by Martin Luther King Jr. And I think through my work, because it does involve me working with bad people. I'm sorry, I have to keep doing that because there's so much more to everyone and everything. I do try to use unconditional positive regard at all times, but I know that this is really hard for everybody. It's not easy for me, especially if I'm with someone that goes completely against my values, completely against my beliefs. But I do strive to understand. However, I have been in situations where I haven't. I've got to admit that. Someone has really, really pushed a button and I have had to walk out. and I can't bear to be in that space. But I just wanted to share that.
That's beautiful. As you were speaking and what Magda brought up, and I mean, I really don't have an answer to how do you actually extend unconditional positive regard to everyone on this planet yet. I mean, that's unless you, like, I think Tracy had said this one, unless you become a monk or, you know, and you've kind of given up on everything else in life, and then you've kind of taken that spiritual, pathway, and that's probably one of the moments when you can do that. But I'm just kind of reflecting back upon one of the experiences that I had in a corporate intervention where a team was not getting along with each other, and there was a lot of hatred amongst the core members of the team, and they were not seeing each other's point of view. And the CEO had requested me to, you know, kind of build the relationships in that team more deeply. And one of the ways that I did was to fall back on this concept of the worldview, or rather what everybody thought of each other in that space. And all I did was a simple exercise of asking each person to come up and stand and talk about their biggest struggle in their life. You know, what's the biggest struggling moment that you've ever had in your life? And each person came, and initially it was a little superficial when one or two people shared it, but slowly it got deeper and deeper. And luckily there were some Italians and Spaniards in this team of, in this organization, and it got more and more authentic. And as it got more and more authentic, the subsequent participants came up and shared such deep struggles about themselves and how they've actually experienced life. The entire space changed by the time we finished that round. It took about a good 6 to 7 hours for everyone to come and share, you know, their struggles. Everybody was being seen in a completely different light by the end of that discussion. And it was such a sight. I have photographs of what happened at the end of it. Everybody hugging each other, and, you know, literally tears flowing. And this is a top executive team of an organization when this exercise happened. And basically what I'm trying to hint as that most times we do not know where that person is coming from, and what that person is being through, and why are they showing up the way they're showing up, you know, and that's something that we are completely unaware of. And it takes a little bit of time and effort and to dig into, you know, that person's perspective. And one of the biggest hurdles in that is for us to keep holding on to our perspective, and while we're going through that process. And that's extremely, you know, what should I say? It comes in as an obstacle in the way. You need to be able to drop that off completely and listen to this person completely with a neutral mind and with an open mind. And then try and appreciate by putting yourself in that person's position, and then appreciate the story from their perspective. And it changes the way you start holding that person. I don't know. I still really don't have the answer for Magda's question over here about what she shared, but this was one thing that helped, and it changed the dynamics of that team dramatically. After that experience, there was tremendous amount of trust and warmth in those relationships within that core team, and the performance changed. So that was one of the possibilities when you start deeply digging into where do people come from. Like each of us over here, if we know the stories of what was your life like, what were the challenges that you faced, what were the difficulties that you've been through, what were some of those struggles, I would have suddenly a new found respect for each one. I hear when you hear the stories, because most of us don't operate from that space. We just operate, at a very face value kind of a thing when we're interacting with people. So that's beautiful, Leah, how you managed to hold that space despite all the challenges. It is challenging, actually.
And it's not easy, and it's not always, like I said, it's not possible to do it always. Gosh, I'm not that type of person. I don't even know if that person exists. However, I do know, and again, this is about the way that we've been brought up and the experiences we've had. I could have been a very different person to the person I am now. And when I look back, I think I could have taken so many different paths, and I could have been someone that a lot of people didn't like. Maybe they don't know. I don't know. Seem to be doing all right, but who knows? And as a teenager, I think a lot of people would have put me in a box and disliked me and made a lot of assumptions. Yeah, I'm not that person now. So I think as well, I operate out of knowing that we all have the potential to change. And I don't want to make a presumption based on the now. And I think that's probably why I do it more than anything, and for the work as well.
So as we discussed this then, and particularly because Magda has triggered this in me about, and the moment these things happen, I start thinking then, what is the way around this? So it would be an interesting exploration to, we understand what worldviews are. We understand the impact and the grip it has on us and how we are operating on a day-to-day basis. Everything in our lives gets defined by the worldview. But how is it possible to accommodate another person's worldview? What are those possible ways? What comes to your mind? Because I want to share a very interesting thing that happened to me when I was going through one of these courses of almost a decade ago. It was a course in Gestalt, and it was a defining moment in my life. I have a couple of them I would like to share, but I just wanted to know what comes up for you when you explore what are the possible ways, particularly when you are having opposing worldviews, and if you want to accommodate somebody else's worldview, then what possibly could you do?
Something comes to mind that Brene Brown has talked about, and that is believing. We never know what's motivating people, right? And we tend to get very caught up within their actions and their words. And so she said that what gets her through is holding on to the belief that everyone is doing the best that they can within their individual belief and context. And so I'm not saying that's accessible to me. I'm not saying that at all. But I feel like I have a choice of whether or not I'm going to, what type of motive I'm going to assign to somebody else. And I can choose to give them at least the belief that they are believing that what they're doing is right. And something really, really, really came to mind last night, which was incredible. I'm taking a meditation training course, and they talked about, there were so many things, but a lot of it was about anger and all of these things, but also love. And so one of the things that the person that was speaking said, everything has to be loved. everyone is motivated by needing love, right? Like this is, and so anything that limits our ability to love, there was this quote by Reverend Angel Kyoto saying, everything that limits your ability to love limits my ability to love. So when we meet someone with hatred, we're going to be met with hatred back. And I'm not saying when we meet someone with love, we'll get love back, but we're not going to be limiting that other person's ability to show love. That's what's coming up for me.
So many things are coming up for me, but one of them is what someone said in the chat is, why do we need to accommodate? I mean, is that our place to accommodate? Again, you guys have met me. I have a hard time accommodating a lot of things. You know, I buy what you're saying, Tracy, but at the same time, like what's occurring to me is accommodating or treating, only having this love, like is that enabling bad things? I go back to like if someone, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Oh, you had a reaction. Tell me.
No, that's such a valid question, because I was reading, so there's a podcast with Joe Rogan and Daryl Davis. And Daryl Davis is a Black musician, and he has this really profound story about how he didn't experience racism because he traveled and he lived, I think he was like an army brat, so he lived with people from all different sort of backgrounds. He didn't experience racism until he came back to the States. And he was old enough to be shocked by it and thought, how can someone hate me? By the way, if anyone listens to this, you will not get through it without bawling. But he said, how can someone hate me without even knowing me? And he said that became sort of his driving thing. He decided he wanted to know that answer, and he wanted to write a book about it. And it sort of happened accidentally, where he was playing at a jazz club, and he ended up going and sitting down, or someone came up and asked him a question. And this person, they had a conversation, they talked about music, and this person pulled out their wallet and showed a card. He was a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan. And so Daryl made it his he decided to write this book and to go and meet with different members of the Klan. And I'm not going to do it justice by telling the story, but through this process, a lot of people actually revoked their membership, because they had never gotten to know anyone other than themselves, ever. You know, like anyone that had any other point of view, they never had a chance to connect with somebody that they hated. And so there's that story. And then there's a couple of documentaries on Netflix that I haven't had the opportunity to watch yet, but I read an interview, and there's a Muslim filmmaker who just did something similar, went in and interviewed several extremists, and as a result ended up having a similar thing. And she did say something really important, Magda, that answers the question. She said, I'm not saying that it's the responsibility, especially for people to be victimized, to go out and meet their victims and love their victims. She said, I'm not saying that. This is a choice that I've made. So I don't think it's on anyone to tell anybody else, yes, go out there and love everybody. Go out there and, you know, but on the other hand, by opening people up to connecting with others that aren't similar, I don't think I'm personally not worried that by being with somebody that holds a viewpoint that's different from me, if it involves hatred, I don't think I'm going to become a hater, but maybe they'll hate a little less. That's where I'm coming from.
Let's look at extremes, though. I love a good extreme, right? What you're talking about sounds like humans who still have some sort of capacity for change. Let's look at the American politicians that I won't name again because my blood will boil. Let's look at people who murder. Let's look at people who skin animals alive. All these things happen all the time. People who take little children as sex slaves. All these things are happening every single day, not once, but a lot. Thank God we aren't exposed to it all the time, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people and animals and children abused, neglected, raped, whatever. Do those people's, those murderers, those kidnappers, those a-holes of every kind, do they deserve their worldview to be shared? Do we have any duty, responsibility, whatever, whatsoever, to look at it from their perspective?
Magda, that's brilliant. I like the fact you've put the absolute extreme, and I think that's really important because that's a fact, yeah. And you know where I stand on this. I think let's focus on the next generations. I'm a youth worker, I'm a youth coach. This is about helping. For me, I don't want to, try and change those people. Maybe it's not even possible. I do like to try and hear what people are saying, why they do what they do, try and see what they're doing from their eyes, and I can take it or leave it. But with young people, I think we have the opportunity to try and prevent people turning into those horrific exploiters, people that hurt animals, people to have a broader view, which we do not teach in schools. We don't. And that's kind of where I'm putting my effort in. Is I don't want to change everyone's views to be like mine. I want people to find out what's right, what's wrong for them, and to do that as a shared view. So in my eyes, no on the one hand with these people that you talk about, these sick people, but I would listen. And then I will make a decision at that point to stand back. But I'm not going to change them, am I? I know in my time in different countries in Africa, I have met people, and here in Asturias actually, who were hunters and were maybe hunting gorillas or elephants or wolves and different animals. And actually, after many, many years of hunting, they realized, through whatever reasons, different stories, that what they were doing was cruel, was wrong, wasn't right. And they stepped to the other side and became conservationists and protecting these animals. I think Virunga, the film, may touch on that, but I might be wrong. So there's always a tiny little chance when you look at cases like that. Yeah.
So, okay, so taking that, and guys, I'm trying to be a little bit controversial for a reason. So is it our responsibility then, when we encounter people like that, to try to change their worldview? And look, I'll keep going back to what Dreyvan said in the beginning. There are 7.8 billion different worldviews, right? There is no such thing as a collective one. There's some things we all agree on, possibly, maybe. I don't actually even know. We all want to be alive, I guess, maybe. But we don't have these commonalities, right? So no matter what you do, there's going to be some sort of you imposing your worldview consciously or unconsciously. But I can tell you right now, because I've done this. My parents have their house, they're near a forest preserve, but it's on private properties. And 2 properties down from us, the people who live there, they have a hunting license and they are happy to hunt. My parents feed the deer and the wild turkeys that live in the area that these people want to hunt. And when they came near our property, this was stupid, I understand. But like, I did not care that they had a gun. I'm like, you know what? You can make these bad decisions, which I don't think you should. I gave them a good lecture, but do not come anywhere near our property because I will have some words / actions. You know what? Like, maybe this person eventually one day would have decided, oh, I don't want to kill them. But maybe my lecture did something. I don't think it did, let's be honest, because I was pretty riled up. But isn't it our responsibility then, that if we see a worldview that really isn't great, i.e. let's go and murder somebody or something, isn't our responsibility to flag that?
So Magda, from whatever you're sharing, what I understand is that you have 2 different kind of perspectives. And using this extreme contrast, I just want to bring in my, just to kind of add to what you're saying over here. I've been in the armed forces for 23 years, and I've oftentimes in the Navy, we've sailed to foreign countries, and, a lot of the Army officers, they come on board and then they sail along with us, and we've, taken them along. And I've had opportunities to exchange and listen to what stories and what kind of lives they've lived in the armed forces. And I once came across this armed forces officer who had 50 kills to his credit. 50 kills. Now, the question is, he's a decorated officer, and probably he even got medals for what he did for the country. But then these are 50 kills, right? So on one hand, you have a person who goes across, who could be a free person in the society, went around killing 50 people, and he would get jailed for it, and he would get life in prison for it, or he would be hanged for it. And on the other hand, you have an armed forces officer who's gone around killing 50 people, and he's been decorated and he's been considered as the hero of the country because he's done it for the country. But the act is the same. That person has killed 50 people, this person has killed 50 people. I mean, when you look at it from the perspective of being a human being, they're no different. But then when we shift the perspective and say this person had no right to kill 50 people, but this person has the right to kill 50 people because he did it to serve his country, then the context shifts. And when that context shifts, everything becomes justified. So I'm just trying to bring in that contrast to try and understand that when we see this as right and wrong, we are seeing it from within a worldview, from you're coming in, you're kind of operating from inside of a worldview which is gripping you and making it right or wrong. When you actually detach yourself from that worldview and go away and then see it from a neutral perspective, then you start seeing the larger picture is what comes up for me to kind of, I don't know if that helped in putting some perspective to it, but it often shocked me to, it's one thing, it's one of the reasons, very honestly, I left the armed forces because I couldn't understand this concept. I couldn't understand that there's a politician somewhere signing me off to war and, and asking me to go and fight a war which somebody else has decided for me to fight. And I need to go and, probably take these kind of actions. So it was just not sitting in well for me after some time, so these are questions that come up, and they're very, very valid questions because it can completely shift perspective immediately. Just one switch, and then you're seeing the whole thing in a different, a different way completely.
Absolutely. And I think with the words that Magda used with responsibility, I'd be an absolute hypocrite if I've just said we all have a responsibility to educate children and young people to be the best versions that they can be of themselves, for others, for the world. And so, yes, I do personally believe that we do have a responsibility. I couldn't keep neutral. That's not what I do. So I was thinking of an example I could give you. There was a farmer once whose dog was petrified of him and cowering every time the farmer went near it with a stick. And I went up to the farmer first to understand the why. So why is your dog so scared? Why? Oh, I'm having to train him so he rounds up the cows and works well. And I was like, okay, and what are you doing to train this dog? And he'd give the details. And then I would go, for me, knowing animals, and also, this is true, having had a farm and having looked after cows as well, and having dogs working with cows nicely, organically, before anyone judges me. I turned around to that farmer and said, okay, I think what you're doing is not good. It's obviously making the dog very scared. For me, I know that a working dog will work so much better if it's showing love and it respects its owner, and you have this bond together. As why don't you try that? What do you think? And so that's kind of how I would put in some responsibility. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to abuse of any animal or any human. Silence and turning a blind eye is pure cruelty to me. That's my personal worldview. So I am going to do something. So for me, neutral doesn't exist. And that's how I would deal with it. So I had to put that in there. Sorry.
Yes, and so I don't even think that neutral is possible, right? Like we have to, as humans, show up in a way that is consistent with what we believe in and what our values are. Having said that, and there's a difference between would I go and listen to Donald, like if we're going to go back to Trump, would I go to a rally? Would I go and listen to him speak? Would I, no. But would I leave a room where somebody who supports Trump is present and refuse to have a conversation with them? Would I still share with them my beliefs and my point of view? Like, absolutely. I don't think that neutrality would be possible for me, especially if I was sitting with someone who is, let's say, racist or sexist or abusive to people. I wouldn't be able to water down, I think that, like we said, that belongs to maybe like a monk, but that's not me. But on the other hand, I think that a lot of the times people go to become extremists is because they feel like the only people that are hearing them are these people that are holding these really extreme points of view. And then that's how that happens. They feel like they're not being heard otherwise. So it's like, can I listen to somebody and can I hear them without, and I'm telling you, physically, personally, I can't. I shut off, I get angry. I don't have that, I don't have that level of self-control. So I'm speaking about this conceptually. I'm not even speaking about this as something that I do. But where I want to be is to be able to hear somebody and then respond to them from my heart out of what I know is true and what I know is right, but at least leave them with feeling like they've been heard, even if they haven't been agreed
No, Tracy, so I agree with what you're saying, and I'm still kind of trying to. What's coming up for me then is that obviously some things don't fit inside certain worldviews, and some things do. And so what becomes the need of the hour then, when things are not fitting into our understanding, but then we are kind of being challenged by something that is happening around us. And then how do you accommodate? See, the word accommodate is opening up to that possibility, basically. I'm not saying accommodate meaning that you kind of own it and you say, oh, everything is fine. I agree to this also. I'm not talking on those lines. I'm saying probably just opening up to that possibility. And how would that be possible? I see, like I read these messages on the chat, and I think somewhere Komal is mentioning that, you need to kind of become aware of their stories, and that works. I've tried it. I've shared one example on that, but again, sometimes it's like how Magda has put it, it's an extreme case where you really don't know how to kind of come to terms with that possibility. Now, how do we adjust to those situations? What comes up for you? I mean, I'll use this moment to share one example, which is completely, I'm taking it off and making it very light, and something which changed my understanding of punctuality. I'm just kind of going to share that how it completely shifted in a moment. Now, I was a student, lived very far away from my school and my college when I studied, and I used to travel almost an hour and a half to get there. And most often it would be, changing 2 buses or 3 buses to get to college and school, and all of that. And my entire growing up life, I was quite late oftentimes, particularly in college, because so I was not a person who was very punctual, and I didn't hold that as something which I really got bothered by, because I always thought that I'm doing this activity and that activity and all of that. And then I landed up in the armed forces for my training, and you know what armed forces and punctuality and their relationship is all about, and we all know. And then I was struggling. There were 80 of us cadets going through our training, and a lot of them had come from a National Defense Academy after 3 years of being trained over there. And I was directly after my graduation getting, going through this training. I couldn't cope with what was happening over there. We would be given 10 minutes to freshen up in the morning. before we fall in for PT at 5 o'clock in the morning. And in those 10 minutes, 80 of us are using bathrooms and showers and, all that, and I couldn't adjust to all of that. And I would invariably get late, invariably. So initially I got punished, and they would give a kind of punishment which would, literally disable you for the next week or so. You can't even wear your shirt buttons, your muscles are all sore and all of that. And you think that after that kind of punishment, you would think that I'm not going to get late because I don't want that punishment. But that didn't really stop me from getting late again, because how much ever I wanted, I couldn't manage it. And it happened a few times that I got punished, and this went on and on for 2 months, 3 months. Eventually, I think one of the officers realized that he needed to raise the level at which he's sending the message across to me. So what he did was, one day, despite my getting punished so many times and becoming almost invalid and seeking medical attention to revive from those punishments, it didn't stop me from getting late. I did still manage to get late. And so one day, what happened was, this 5 o'clock morning, everybody fell in, and I climbed through the ship, all the decks, and ran down the gangway and ran down the jetty. And I could see that everybody's fallen, and the cadet of the day is going in to make the report. And I'm like about 30, 40 meters away from that fallen. And I'm kind of shouting, just wait, don't make that report. I don't want that punishment. I know how bad it is and what's going to happen to me. And the officer of the day over there just stops me and says, just relax. Just relax. And then he takes the report, and this guy reports that 79 cadets, 1 cadet missing, and Cadet Dreyvan is missing, and etc. etc. What this officer did that day was, he took that fall and took that report, called me in, and he made me stand on a bollard. And for the next 2 hours, he made me monitor a punishment for the 79 people over there because I got late. And I was not touched. And I was told that I want you to give counts. And it was the same punishment that I was getting every time I got late. This was the same punishment. And I was told by the officer that in case anybody is found shamming or not doing the punishment properly, it's only going to keep increasing by half an hour. And that happened, and the punishment went on for 3 hours. Now, I was standing over there, and my entire world toppled. Because till then, I was of the opinion that if I am late, I face the consequences. It was my worldview. My view was that I am responsible for everything that I do in my life, right? It does not affect anybody else. What I do, that's it. But what happened that day was, everything came crashing down for me. Everything, the whole understanding of what the world is, came crashing down, because I was standing there thinking, what are these 79 cadets going to do to me after this entire thing gets over when I get back into the deck? And, they're probably going to give me a code red. They're going to throw blankets on me and hit me with hockey sticks or something like that. What is going to happen? Because they are getting punished for something that I did, and it just simply toppled. And I couldn't understand. I had to tell him, hey, you're not doing that punishment properly. I was the guy who got late, but you're not doing the punishment properly there, and I had to keep giving these inputs throughout that 3 hours of a session. Now, that day and today, it's roughly about 28 or 29 years ago, I have never been late to another incident, another event, ever. Because what shifted for me was the shifting of the worldview, that if I am late, it's not just about me, it's about the entire lot connected to me is getting affected. And that shift was permanent. That shift was deep. That shift was so kind of got etched into my every cell in my body and into my DNA, that it just somehow stops me from getting late ever again, for any event. So I'm just saying that sometimes you need these drastic kind of steps to really change the worldview for people who are incorrigible, or people who are on that extreme, and maybe that is the requirement. And I was incorrigible at that point in time, and that shift happened in one event, and it's 28 years and I've never been late, ever. Traffic doesn't come in the way, weather doesn't come in the way, nothing comes in the way. I'm always on time, irrespective. So that is the kind of shift I'm talking about, and it's possible. But it's a pretty hard way to get there. But it is just one of the incidents that came to my mind about how my worldview shifted completely. And it went from, I'm just not responsible for myself, but I'm responsible for all the people around me in my environment. that is the kind of a shift that took place in that situation.
Dreyvan, thank you for sharing that. And it kind of triggers in me climate change, what you've just said. If everyone just took their one little bit of responsibility of reducing the electricity usage or something like that, then climate change is less likely to happen. Well, it's already happening, but it ain't going to go as bad as it will do if we all think that it's somebody else's responsibility. And what scared me when you were talking is, does that drastic thing have to happen? Does the world have to change that much, the climate, our food production, etc., for everyone to switch off that lamp that they don't really need in their house? And yeah, it is, I don't know, one little thing that everyone could do. That's that coming together, that oneness.
As you speak of that, I remember a few years ago when Cape Town in South Africa was declared as a city which was running out of groundwater, and there was no availability of water in that city. And I think that drastic moment when the government declared, and there was a countdown that was going on, that 10 days to go, 9 days to go, 8 days to go, before which, when you come to D-Day, there's not going to be water in the city. And I think that regular badgering of that countdown and all that changed the way people used water in that city. And today it's moved away from number one, in the top 10 cities which are going to be facing water problems in the world. So I think sometimes you need that to wake up, people who, it's an awakening that happens, and sometimes it has to come down to that drastic moment, a drastic kind of an event which triggers that. So it's true. I mean, unfortunate but true.
Dreyvan, I'm curious to know. Oh no, you go.
You always do that. As a coach, then what is our role in all this, right? We're not going, if someone is with a behavior that we know that needs to change. I mean, as a coach, what is our role? What should be our role? We're not supposed to be telling people what to do, right? And we're not supposed to be leading them with our questions. We're supposed to help them discover.
I wonder that myself every single day, but I saw on one of the AA sessions where it was talked about helping people connect to their self-awareness. So like, will that be it? Like, I feel like a lot of these people that are behaving in this way are living in a relative unconsciousness of who they are and how they're showing up and how their actions are impacting others. So if we as coaches can help connect people to their own awareness, maybe, but also next question comes up, are those people even gonna wanna be coached? Like, I feel like people that are coming into a coaching space are looking for something different than what a lot of these people are about.
Tracy.
And Dreyvan, I have a question. Sure. Oh, yes.
We're all doing this. Do you want to ask Dreyvan the question, or can I jump in?
No, I want you to go.
Thank you.
I can ask him later.
I've been reading a load of books recently, and I have written on my board over there the answer to all world problems, because every single book points to the same thing, is self-awareness. Honestly, everything. Empathy. How do you become more empathetic? Self-awareness. How do you become a good leader? Self-awareness. How do you become a good parent? Self-awareness. How do you become a good teacher? Self-awareness. And then you can help others. It's all about you first. So on an individual level, if we all became more self-aware, we don't even need to impose any agenda on any of our clients. We're doing something by helping people become more self-aware. That's all we need to believe, and it's true. But I think if we want to make a massive impact through our coaching conversations, our coaching approach, even training using coaching as a tool, then I would say think systemically. Have a systemic approach to what we do to reach more people. I know when I worked with a school, well, some young people in a school in Zambia, had a massive effect. It was absolutely fantastic. I used coaching and mentoring for peer education. This was absolutely brilliant. And I saw these young people empowered and confident and ready to go. But what I hadn't realized, and now I do, is you also need to take the entire school, the teachers, the head teacher, the community, etc., on the same journey. Because if you just empower a few people, then there's lots of other people that are going to disempower. So I think systemic coaching actually has a big part to play in this, as well as individual self-awareness.
That's a fantastic point, Leah. That's a beautiful perspective to really address that issue. But again, going back to what Magda asked, at an individual level, if you were to be coaching one-on-one, then what do we really do with our worldviews? And it's not so much more about the coachee or the client, it's more about you being able to relax your own worldviews every time you see that, show its face, and to be able to put that aside and really, again, accommodate what's happening with the client and what understand his perspective and his worldview, and give that space for it to exist. That is at a one-on-one level. But yes, like you brought up, just a few people in an organization, it's very difficult. It needs a systemic approach. It is a system that needs to be really addressed, and that's absolutely true.
However, a few individuals, I mean, some people don't want to do that. Some people don't want to be changed or don't want their worldview changing. Okay, that's fine. You have to kind of give up a little bit there. But those people that you've empowered and managed to bring along on that journey, then ask them, what can you do? Who can you reach to make this global, systemic? Nowadays, we're all global citizens as well. And I think the internet's opened up so much opportunity. It doesn't have to be your school, your community. You can go even further if you want to. So yeah, no.
I love that.
There's a limitation,
Leah.
there's possibility. Thank you.
I love that. And you know what? The program you're doing with young people, I think is a great example of this. And one thing that, there's many things I love about Coacharya, especially all of you here and the panelists, because you guys are amazing. But one thing I really love about what we do is our focus on self-coaching, and not just, here's a model, go forth and replicate this, coach. No, here's your universe so that you can figure things out, and you can help others figure things out, and you can help others figure things out. Kind of the democratization approach that anyone can be a coach. Every single client we work with, everybody is coachable. There's only unclientable coaches, no uncoachable clients. And Leah is proving this with the youth program that she's just recently started, which had a session with some of her students yesterday, where she's working with these young leaders, and we have every intention of making them into coaches, even though some of them are just finishing high school. And I think if we can, kind of the lesson for me in a lot of life is the things that we learn. I think when we see the benefits it has, I think we have a responsibility to the planet, to our communities, to everybody, to impart those things, to teach them, to help themselves. I mentioned the comments, covert coaching. We need to invent covert coaching. But I think we actually did, like with self-coaching, that kind of is covert coaching. I know that I find myself, instead of having just regular conversations, a lot of times I have that mental pause, and I try to reframe the thing I'm going to say into a question and into an open-ended question. So instead of kind of trying to only show what I very visibly always show that I care about, I'm trying to get the person I'm speaking to open up more and go into, go into the background versus just react to my reaction. So anyway, I think self-coaching is pretty awesome. And I think as coaches, the more that we can do to empower our clients and communities and families to self-coach, and learn the kinds of things that we are learning, I think we're going to be, have a better chance of solving these kinds of issues.
I was just thinking that an example of covert coaching is almost what you said, Leah, about your neighbor with the dog. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times, like I know for myself, this is something that is still evolving me as a human because I used to always venture my opinion first. And now I really, really, really try to ask questions and to listen. And it does not come to me naturally. It really doesn't. And at least within the coaching space, I'm aware that that's how I need to show up. And outside of the coaching space, I'm like, my family will tell you, I'm still, I still have my struggles. But yeah, I thought that was a beautiful example of kind of, you went to that person and asked them why first, and heard them, and then introduced another idea. And yeah, I thought, yeah, that's a beautiful example of covert coaching.
Do you know, Tracy, a lot of young people want to do debates. It's like really exciting to do a debate. And I don't particularly like debates. That's just my own personal thing. I'm not saying they're bad, but for me, I don't like them very much. But I deliver them in a different way, which is just like that. Okay, let's try and hear and understand each other and the different perspectives. And then instead of saying, I don't agree with you, what you're saying is wrong, because that just disempowers someone straight away and makes them go on the defensive. I'll say, okay, that's really interesting. I don't quite get your point of view, but for me, this is what I believe, and I'd love to find out more about what you believe. And then by what I've said, this is probably a bit bad me saying this, but I've indirectly hinted that what they're doing isn't right. So like this person with the dog, I see them now and I say, oh, the dog looks happier. How are things going? I keep that conversation going on the positive as much as possible. And slowly but surely, maybe that will ingrain into somebody. However, it is my point of view. But anything that isn't hurting anything, I believe, for me, that's right.
Yeah. As I listen to all that you were discussing, and I see this question coming up over and over again on the chat. I think who's bringing it up is Vinita, about the usage of the word accommodate. And I mean, I think I can see that she prefers using being aware and not accommodate. And two examples come to my mind. Tracy and I, we keep catching up on a lot of documentaries, and that's very useful. We find, to use examples from them in our ACTP course that we're running together. One of the documentaries which Tracy asked me to see was My Octopus Teacher, and this is an amazing documentary where a person, I think his name was Craig Foster or if I remember right, would go into the sea every day, somewhere in the south of Africa, and kind of, he actually befriended an octopus. And to be able to get that octopus to trust him, it took him roughly about 200 visits underwater on a regular basis every day for hours together, just going and making himself present in front of the octopus, and then just doing nothing but being there until finally the octopus, reached out and touched him. And then there are wonderful scenes in that movie where the octopus actually comes and rests on his chest underwater. When it runs away from some other situation, comes and rests on his chest underwater. I mean, I'm just saying, just the awareness it's very different from really spending that time to accommodate. If the intention is to really address it systemically, like how Leah brought up, you really need to get into that system. You really need to become a part of that system to be able to bring that change. I mean, you couldn't actually change a system from outside without being a part of that system. So what becomes useful for me when I watch that movie, and what the learning that I take away is that here is this person who doesn't live inside the water, but goes every day and spends 6 hours, 8 hours in the water every day, becoming a part and parcel of the system, understanding that system, living in that environment where the octopus lives, understanding what the threats the octopus faces in its life, and understanding all of that before it can actually make that little bit of progress, that one little inch forward. And that's extremely important. And this is something I also learned roughly 2 decades ago about how it is applicable even in amongst human beings. When I went through this NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, I went through the session, and they had taken us through how do I sync myself and build rapport with the other person that I'm trying to build rapport with. And the first step was to stop to kind of sync my breathing with that other person and come down to the exact way the other person is breathing. It's more like if there's a gear shift that is happening, if you want to, there is a gear which is moving like this and it's got so many, edges, and you want to kind of clutch in, you have to come to the same speed at which the other gear is moving. Only then can you go in. You couldn't possibly go in just waiting for a moment that at some point in time there's going to be a pause and I'm then going to go and clutch in. You cannot clutch in. You have to actually get to the same speed. And that's basically the point, that you need to become a part of that system, then engage, clutch in, and then do the work that you need to do to be able to change that system. And that's what, these are the 2 examples that come to my mind about accommodating and being aware. Just being aware is not really sufficient most times. It's not a very proactive thing. It's a very passive thing.
Dreyvan, whenever I go into communities, this is basically what I do. So if I go to another country, who am I to know what they need and what's going to change their lives? I don't see the world from their worldview. I haven't lived their life, and I would just be ridiculous if I went in and volunteered and designed a project and imposed that project to help them. Yeah, I totally disagree with that. Obviously, that's my worldview. And actually what I do whenever I do go into communities, and I travel a lot around Africa and I've been to Latin America and other places, and is actually consult with the community in a nice way, not all professionally consult, but actually get to understand the need of the people in that community. What is that real need? And then I can understand a bit more about the systemic kind of system, because if I only have 6 weeks or 8 weeks somewhere, I need to understand very quickly. So the word need for me is very important on that, and understanding the needs of others.
That's amazing. And you know what just came to mind? I started typing it and then I'm like, no, I'm just going to say this to you live. The difference between what you do and what missionaries used to do. There's an example of people that would go into communities and impose their worldview on an entire community with devastating results. And not just look, North America. We, and I say we, meaning like, through my mom's side of the family, who are French Canadians, like we settlers coming in here and imposing a different worldview on people that were existing just fine before us. So yeah, anyway, that's a whole other webinar.
I could talk about that for ages.
Yeah. This has been amazing. I love this conversation. Thank you. Dreyvan, I have a quick question for you before we wrap up. Would you say that situation that you talked about, and that's the first time I think that I had heard you share that, and that is such a powerful story that you shared about punctuality. Would you say that sort of, in a very harsh way, opened you up to systemic thinking? Is that
yes.
what, is that what, yeah.
Well, yes. Before that, I live in this world my way, and or the highway kind of a thought process. But in the armed forces, that doesn't really work. It's not about brilliant individuals. It's not about one person. It's about the entire team. And to bring in that idea of you are as the team is as good or as bad as the weakest person in that organization, and that was the whole idea, which they took a long time to realize that I needed a higher level dose to understand that. And so that's what I went through on that particular day. And it really changed my idea of what teams are. And that is something that I try and bring into the organization in my, I mean, I can't implement those kind of, methods in helping teams, but I do a lot of work around disciplining organizations or disciplining people in the organization. This is another thing which comes up for me, which is coming from this book called Jim Collins' Good to Great, where he says that most times organizations are looking for disciplined action, disciplined thought processes. And they think that if you could discipline people's thinking and if you could discipline people's actions, then you could discipline the man. It's actually just the opposite. It's the disciplined man who thinks in a disciplined way, and it is out of that disciplined thought process, what comes is disciplined action, and that is what is required. So it's oftentimes the person first before the thought and before the action, and that is something that happened in that moment for me, wherein I understood this completely in a different perspective, and it changed my idea of I am just not me, but I'm part of a system, and that system and me are extremely interrelated in more ways than I could think of, and that's what opened up for me that day. Yeah.
Thank you. We are drawing near the end of our time together. I'm posting something in the chat and with a link to our LinkedIn group where we can keep the conversation going, and we can perhaps share some links to some of the things that we were talking about today. And would love to invite anyone to share any final thoughts or words before we head out.
I'll share a final thought. I keep talking about Leah's program and Leah's work with young people in like every single context. And it's popping up for me a couple of times here too, because a lot of what we talk about, I mean, the earlier we start working on self-awareness, like just think of, I'm not gonna guess how old you guys are, but I just turned 40. The fact that it's only been the past few years that this has happened, and I've been able to change my thinking and my approach, like, holy shit, like imagine if I had been doing this since I was a teenager. One thing that comes to mind for me is when one of the times I had my heart broken, the guy that I thought I was seeing somebody else, and he ended up getting engaged to her, and he told me that he was seeing her when he got engaged to her, like, and other people knew. So until then, I had this worldview of you can't trust people. And if something is not working, you talk about it. That's not where he was coming from. That's not where who I thought we're friends were coming from. Talk about a change of worldview. I mean, it was devastating. And, I wish I had like the reflective capacity, the ability to pause and ask, what the heck was he thinking? Like, it doesn't make me a worthless person, which is what I took from that. It led me to get into an abusive relationship, which led me to a lot of physical and emotional pain, which led me to many years of like really low self-worth. I mean, the flow-on effect of the first event just has really changed my life. In the end for the better, but whatever. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Point is that if I had that awareness or the ability to at least explore what the heck happened when I was 25 at the time, like imagine what positive things could have happened instead of 6 years of being abused by someone and years since then of trying to get out from that. I literally couldn't even talk about it until about 3 years ago. So the fact that I'm talking about this in a recorded conversation, you guys have no idea how big that is for me, and me not like falling apart by saying it. So anyway, Leah is amazing. Like, you're all amazing, but sorry, Leah's like more amazing than most people. And the work she's doing with young people, in whatever shape or form, like we need to support her program, the young people around us, the generation that's coming up, the kids who aren't ruined yet, but frankly are fixing problems by calling them out, the Gretas of the world. I think we have the responsibility as adults, as coaches, to to do this. And yes, we can save the world. And hopefully when the people who are in their teens right now and they're having the Awake, Aware, Arise Coacharya, when I'm old and gray, and they're having this conversation, I hope it's gonna, no, I know it's gonna be different. And they will talk about, well, back in 2020, they had these examples, because hopefully they'll have fewer of them to share from their own personal lives, because we did our job.
Magda, thank you. I won't
You're
say
welcome.
any more. Absolutely, absolutely. If everyone had this when you, even children, you know, really young little kids, I actually do not understand why we don't. Why have we never taught this? Our lives would be so different right now. There's the answer. Change.
Because we didn't know. Now we know.
We didn't know.
There's no more excuse. Our worldview has changed.
Improve worldviews through coaching and skills and leadership education with young people and teenagers. And we do have an epic program. And thank you, Coacharya, for making this possible. Woo.
Thank you. Yes, so agreed. Everything that you said, Magda. So I was, as you were speaking, thinking, yeah, like I had a very traumatic event happen when I was 24, and wish that I had had the awareness that I do now. But then, Leah, when you talked about it, I'm like, actually, I think even before then, like, you know, I think even growing up with it, we don't. Anyway, that's another topic for another webinar, but we are here now, and it doesn't matter what age we are, because I think of that, I'm like, I'm 49, and I'm just, some of this stuff I'm just learning, and, you know, some people know it literally as teenagers, but it's never too late. And I think as long as we keep showing up and showing up with our hearts and really wanting to make a difference, that's what counts. Dreyvan, over to you.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, the three of you are so lovely. And I just, you know, I really get inspired by the work you people are doing. Leah, Magda, I mean, fantastic. I mean, what you people are doing out there through Coacharya, and the energy which Magda brings is just amazing. And Leah, your authenticity and the integrity with which you're pursuing with this single, you know, minded focus about how you could contribute towards changing this world. It's just brilliant. And yes, Tracy, I'm just blessed to have you as a partner with me on this ACTP journey and all the work that we're doing together. And again, your authenticity. And see, the best part is I love the way all of you are so eager to actually revisit and re-examine your own worldviews, and then, you know, right, really look at how, if you're holding on to it rigidly, and then if you could become flexible about it, and if you could open that up. And that's the work we need to do. And if that is something that we're doing on a daily basis, then that's a huge thing opening up for the world. And the more number of people doing it, it's just then, you know, going to help the world change. That's the whole thing that comes up for me. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the panel, and thank you for being in my life, all of you.
Thank you, Dreyvan. Yeah, big hug.
Yeah, big virtual hug across the world. Thank you so much, everyone, and to our participants that joined us here. And we still have some more Awake, Aware, Arise sessions on the schedule, so please check them out on the website. Love having you here. We will post some links in the LinkedIn group, and I don't know where, I was about to end with something inspirational, but I'm just going to say thank you and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
A one-liner. A one-liner.
A one-liner. Do it.
A one-liner. Worldviews. A truth believed is a lie. You know, that was something which I heard long back, and I spent a lot of time trying to think about what does it really mean. And it kind of puts into perspective what Leah brought up, those quotes in the beginning. And a truth believed is a lie, because the moment you believe that this is the truth, then you're shutting down all the doors on it, on other possibilities. So it becomes a lie, you know, so yeah.
Lovely.
Bye. Bye. All.
Bye.